Hello, this is Mrs. Ward, and I wanted to go over the exit ticket that you guys took last class before you take the quiz today. So I just have exit ticket 1 here. If you have exit ticket 2, it's similar. You'll be able to follow along. The substitute has your exit tickets. They should have passed them out before you're watching this video. So I have cosine 2x plus sine x is equal to 0. Remember, for cosine 2x, I have 3 choices. And I'm going to choose the one that has sine x in it. That way I'm only using one trig function. So in place of cosine 2x, I'm going to write what that is equal to in terms of sine. And that's going to be 1 minus 2 sine squared x plus sine x is equal to 0. I'm going to write this in descending order of powers. So negative 2 sine squared x plus sine x plus 1 is equal to 0. I'm going to do that so it makes it easier for me to do product sum. So my product, when I multiply my first coefficient times my last, is negative 2. My sum is my b, or the coefficient in my middle term, which is going to be 1. In order to get a positive 1, I'm going to use a positive 2 times a negative 1. That gives me a sum of 1 and a product of negative 2. So I'm going to rewrite this sine x with these two coefficients. So I'm going to have negative 2 sine squared x plus 2 sine x minus sine x plus 1 is equal to 0. Remember, when we product sum, we group the first two. So I'm grouping these two, and I'm going to group these two. So when I do that, here I'm going to factor out, I'm going to go ahead and factor out a negative 2 sine x. So factor out negative 2 sine x, and I'm left with sine x minus 1. And then here I'm going to factor out a negative 1 and make that, yes, I should have done that. Sine x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, this sine x minus 1 is my first parenthesis, and my second one will be negative 2 sine x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now set both parentheses equal to 0. And if you didn't have all your work, you didn't get full credit. Just because you magically came up with the answers doesn't mean you get all the points. Here I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I'm going to say sine x is equal to 1. When does the sine equal to 1? And that happens at pi over 2. Here I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I'm going to have negative 2 sine x is equal to positive 1. Divide both sides by negative 2. And I'm going to get sine of x is equal to negative 1/2. So then I ask myself, when does the sine of x equal to a negative 1/2? And that happens at 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Now technically the directions say find all solutions. Yes, find all solutions. And I didn't take off, probably should have. But when I write these solutions, I should also include those multiple laps around my unit circle. So I should have that plus 2 pi n as part of that answer. And that is my work for that one. Moving on to the next one, apply the double angle formula to find the exact trig values. So it gives me the sine of u is equal to 5/13. It's also telling me that u is in the first quadrant. So I'm going to go ahead and make my triangle in the first quadrant. Here they're calling it u, so I will call it u. If the sine is 5/13, that means the opposite is 5. The hypotenuse is 13. To find this missing side here, I'm going to take 5 squared plus b squared is equal to 13 squared. When I do all that work, I get a choice of b being plus or minus 12. Well, since it's in the first quadrant, I'm going to make it 12. Just so we're clear, we know the sine is equal to, we know the sine of u is equal to 5/13. My cosine of u is going to be equal to 12/13. And so to find the sine of 2u, I'm using that formula that says the sine of 2u is equal to 2 sine x, or sine u, I should say, cosine u. So substituting in, I'm going to have the number 2. The sine we said was 5/13. The cosine we said was 12/13. So on my calculator, I'm going to take 2 times 5/13. Let's see, where's my 5? times 12/13. I'll be able to type in here. And when I do that, I get 120 over 169. And that is my answer. Moving on to the next one, it says apply the half angle formula to find the exact trig value for the cosine of 165. So I'm going to say 165 is equal to what angle over 2? We'll double that, and it's going to be 330 degrees over 2. This is going to allow me to use the half angle. So I'm going to say the cosine of 330 degrees over 2, which is the same thing as the cosine of 165, by the way. And I'm going to do the half angle, so I'm going to have plus or minus, and then 1, and then I'm finding the cosine of, so it'll be 1 plus the cosine of 330 degrees all over 2. So I'm finding the cosine of 165 degrees. 165 degrees is in the second quadrant. The cosine is negative in the second quadrant. So I know when I do this, my answer is going to have to be negative. So I'm just going to write that negative every time I do this. Now I'm going to have 1 plus the cosine is the square root of 3 over 2. And this is all over 2. Now remember, I'm not skipping steps, Here's that negative sign. I'm going to rewrite 1 as 2 over 2. So it has a common denominator, the square root of 3 over 2. And this is all over 2, which is underscore b over 1. So now when I add, I'm going to get 2 plus the square root of 3 over 2. So I'm going to keep that. Then I'm going to switch to multiplication and change that 2 over 1 to 1/2. So there's that negative sign. 2 plus the square root of 3. And when I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. So Mrs. Connell leaves it like that. That's great. Okay, I'll give you credit for that. But actually, you could take the square root, and I would prefer that you have the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. And it's okay to have a radical within the radical all over 2. You have to have that negative sign. This is your final answer. A lot of you, for some reason, and I don't know why, you drop this plus sign. You can't drop the plus sign. There's a big difference between 2 times the square root of 3 and 2 plus the square root of 3. So there's my work step by step. Okay, moving on. Identify the double angle formula given by the expanded equation. So they're telling you that this is a double angle. So I go to my double angle formulas and I start looking at it. The only one that have like minus are the cosines. And the only one that starts with the number minus sine squared is that 1 minus 2 sine squared. That's my double angle. And I ask myself, what do I have to do to this to get 6 minus 12x sine x squared? And I say, well, I have to multiply that by 6. Because the 6 times 1 will give me the 6. The 6 times that 2 will give me the 12. Okay, so I decided that's the one I want to use. So here's 6. This here is a double angle formula. And that double angle is cosine 2x. So this becomes this. And so my final answer is going to be this whole thing. All right, I hope this helps. Best of luck on the quiz, and I will see you next time.